Have you ever had someone try to help you and you're like, please don't, please don't. You're just going to make things worse. I do not need your help right now. A lot of times this is what happens, right? People try to come in and they try to help you, and it's like, I know what I'm doing. I do not need your help. All you're going to do is mess this up. This is probably how my husband feels whenever I try to come and help him do something outside or something. He's like, please go away. I don't need your help. But especially when someone tries to help us with like a problem. Sometimes they mean well. They're trying hard to help you. They care about you a lot, but their goals are not your goals, or they don't know the whole story. Something isn't going to work out right. And so better for them to just not try to help you. And then other times it's like, you can't help me. You're just a person and you don't have any power and you don't know enough. And so I'm just going to go to God. That is our best bet. He is the one that actually knows all the things and can do them all perfectly. And we can't, and no one else can do everything in the right way. And so we think sometimes that we want a certain thing, we want it to work out a certain way, and we just need these things to go exactly this way, and then everything will be fine. But God's like, no, that's not how it's supposed to work. I know what I'm doing. Back off and let me do it. Same as we are with other people sometimes. God is like, I know what I'm doing, and I just want you to release it to me and let me do it. That's what happens in the story today with David. All these people keep trying to help David by taking care of all of his adversaries, and he's like, I didn't need any of that. God is able to help me. God's been taking care of me all this time. He knows what he's doing. All y'all are doing is messing everything up. And so I just need you to stop. And so in the last episode, we had a guy come to David and tell him, hey, King Saul and his sons are dead, and I am the one that put him out of his misery. He thought that this would make David happy. And David's like, I'm not happy about that. I know that the Philistines are the ones that actually wounded him, but you think it's going to make me happy for you to come and tell me that you put him out of his misery because he asked, and you're saying it to me as if I should be happy about this, and I'm not happy about this, and he killed him. He was like, you had no respect for the king. You're coming to me as if this is gossip, and I'm not happy about it. You did not do the right thing. Then after he killed this guy, executed him for the crime of murder, then he wrote this beautiful funeral song and put it in the book of Asher for everyone to remember Saul and Jonathan. And so after he wrote this song, then it should have been pretty self-explanatory. It's like God told him already that he was going to succeed Saul as the king. And so he should have been like, okay, so now I go take the throne. But David has been trusting God for too long to go out on his own. And so he says, okay, God, now what do I do? Should I go to Judah? And God's like, yeah, go to Judah. And he's like, where do I go in Judah? And he said, I want you to go to Hebron. And Hebron was the highest place in the land of Judah. Judah was David's land, his territorial land. He was from the tribe of Judah. And this is a Levitical city, which now lies in the West Bank. And this is where Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah are all buried. So this is a very familiar town for, the Israelites, where it all began. And also, whenever they first came into the Promised Land, this town was owned by Anak and his 3 sons. And when the Israelites came in and took over the territory, Caleb gained this territory and defeated him, Anak and his 3 sons. And so this is a big area called Hebron, but it's made up of several smaller territories. And so it says that since God told David to do this, then David takes his 2 wives. Remember that he had a first wife named Michal that was Saul's daughter, but he had to leave her behind, and Saul gave her away to someone else. And then he went and married a woman from Jezreel. And then whenever he had the battle with Nabal, he left Nabal's wife, he left her without a husband, and so he married Abigail to take care of her after her and her husband had gotten in a battle and he had killed him. And so he has those two wives, the wife from Jezreel and Abigail. And so he takes both of them and all of the men who have been with him, and they all move to Hebron and those small cities that make that area up. And then when he got there, the people that were living in that town told him the whole story about how the people of Jabesh Gilead had found out about Saul's death and traveled across the Jordan River, because those are people that had lived on the eastern side of the Jordan River. They traveled across, bravely rescued their bodies, Saul and his son's bodies, from the temple wall where they had hung them, and took them back and buried them. And so David is like, oh, that is such a wonderful story. I want to honor these people. Please bring them to me. And so the people of Jabesh Gilead were brought to David, and David blessed them. And he said, you did such a respectful thing to take care of Saul and his sons after their death and not allow them to be desecrated, their bodies to be desecrated in the temple of the Philistines. And he said, I wish great blessings on you from the Lord, and I will also always be good to you. And I ask that now you would accept me as your king, just as the people of Judah have accepted me as the king, which I forgot to tell you that part. But when he first arrived in Hebron, the people of Judah anointed him as their king. That's a pretty important part of the story. And so he asked the people of Jabesh Gilead, will you accept me also as your king, just as the people of Judah did? Now, it doesn't tell us whether they do or they don't, but then he moves on, and it says that after this, during the time that the people of Judah are making David their king, then Abner, which remember is Saul's cousin, who was also the commander of his army, he decides to make Saul's son, his only living son left, the king. And so this is beginning in verse 9. It says that he made him the king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, even over all of Israel. Now, these places that he is naming are, it sounds like only a few places, but he's actually naming all of Israel except for the land of Judah and Simeon, because Simeon's land, if you remember, was kind of just a circle in the midst of Judah's land, and so it was surrounded by Judah's land, and so they were kind of swallowed up with that. And so the tribe of Simeon and Judah were ruled by David, but everyone else was ruled by Ishbosheth, which was Saul's only living son. And his cousin and commander had decided that that's the way it was going to be. And when he names Gilead, he's using all the 2.5 tribes on the eastern side of the Jordan. He's calling all of them Gilead. So Reuben owned land over there, Gad owned land over there, and half of the tribe of Manasseh owned land over there. And so he's calling that whole part Gilead. And then he says the Asherites, which are from the tribe of Asher. And then he says Jezreel, and all of the people from Zebulun, Naphtali, and Issachar covered that area, the Jezreel Valley. And then he says the people of Ephraim, and he uses Ephraim to encompass all of Joseph's children's land. So Ephraim and Manasseh, because Joseph's land was divided between both of his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. But he's using that as the whole thing. And then he lists Benjamin. And the reason he lists Benjamin specifically is because Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. And so he's saying, and then obviously, the Benjamites are going to want someone from their tribe to to rule over them. And so all of the north of Israel and all of the east of Israel is ruled by Ishbosheth, and all of the south is ruled by David. And then it goes on in verse 10 and 11 to say that Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he was the king for 2 years. And the house of Judah, however, followed David. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So this is a discrepancy, right? And we're all like, how is it that we find out later that David takes over the whole entire kingdom, spoiler alert, after Ishbosheth dies? And so how can David rule for 7.5 years and Ishbosheth only rule for 2? And there's a couple of theories on this. One could be that, remember, the Philistines have just taken over the Jezreel Valley. That is what happened whenever they killed Saul and his sons. They got the Jezreel Valley. And so that covers a lot of their territory. And so maybe Ishbosheth didn't rule over all of the land at that time because it took him 5 years to get that land back from the Philistines. And it would also explain, because they own the northern part over there on the western side, it would explain why he has gone to his capital. Ishbosheth's capital is over in the land of Gad on the eastern side of the Jordan. And at first you're thinking, well, he did that to be further away from David, because David is on the western side of the Jordan, and you would have to cross the Jordan River and then also go up north and cross the Jabbok River in order to get to Ishbosheth's capital. And so it kind of looks like maybe he was trying to get, rule in a different area away from David. But also, he probably couldn't be on the western side up there in the north because the Philistines had taken that land over. And so one of the theories is that for the first 5 years, he was trying to get all his land back. He eventually got all the land back and then only ruled 2 more years, while David was ruling 7.5. And that was the time frame, the full time frame. The other theory is that they both began to rule at the same time. And, he was taking back that territory in that time frame. And then it says that David was ruling in Hebron for 7.5 years. And so it's just saying that he continued to rule in Hebron even when he got control over the whole land. And they didn't start counting his next reigning time until he moved to Jerusalem. And so they're saying, 7.5 years in Hebron, even though part of that time was with Judah and part of that time was with everyone. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It also doesn't make a ton of sense that it took him 5 years to get the land back, but I think that makes more sense. It also can be a combination of both of them. None of it really matters. We don't have to know exactly how it all worked out. We just know that it's true because the Bible says it. But those are at least the theories, so that y'all know what, how you can reconcile that. So anyway, in the beginning, they were arguing as to who gets to rule the land. And they decided to meet together and try to figure this out. And so they go to the pool of Gibeon and to discuss this, who's going to rule the land. And they have recently excavated what they believe to be the pool of Gibeon. And it is cut out of the bedrock in Gibeon. And it's 37 foot in diameter and 82 feet deep. And it has a limestone spiral staircase made out of 79 steps that goes down into this pool. So it's a very beautiful place, I'm sure. And both of the sides, David and Ishbosheth's sides, came there to discuss this, saying they sat on either side of the pool, and each of their commanders, Abner, who was Ishbosheth's commander, he was also Saul's, and then David's nephew Joab was his commander. So the two commanders talked and they said, no reason for us to go to war over this and have both of our armies killing lots of people. Let's just get some champions to represent each side and fight, and then whoever has will get 12 each. Whoever has the most standing at the end is the winner, and he gets to be the ruler over the land. That sounded like a good idea to everyone. So each of them selected 12 champions, and then they paired them up and they began to fight. But it wasn't much of a fight. Both of them just stabbed each other with their swords, all 12 of them. And so all 24 men lay dead, and no one is a clear winner. And so then they just begin to fight. And David had two other nephews. All of these men, Joab and Abishai and Asahel, all three of these men were sons of his sister Jeruiah. I do not know how to say these names, so I'm just making them up, sounding it out as I can. But these were sons of his sister, and they were all in his army. And so one of the sons, Asahel, they said was very fast, and so he began chasing Abner. And Abner was like, hey, quit chasing me. Like, I don't have a problem with you specifically. I don't want to have to answer to your brother, who is the commander of the army. Quit chasing me. I don't want to kill you. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kill you. And so finally, Abner turns around and it says stabs him with the butt of his spear, and it is so forceful, apparently. I don't know how you kill someone with the butt of your spear. I don't know what the butt of his spear looked like, but he did it so forcefully that it shoved all the way through Asahel's stomach and killed him. And so then the other two brothers are chasing after Abner. They're trying to kill him. And then they run to this hill, and all of the Benjamites gather around Abner, and all of the Israelites are there with the two brothers. And Abner calls out to Joab, and he's like, hey, are we really going to do this? A lot of men have already died. Why do we have to keep fighting? Let's stop all this madness. Call off your people. And Joab's like, fine. Sounds good to me. I don't want any more people to die either. And so he blows the trumpet, calls his men away. And then Abner goes back to the capital of where Ishbosheth is ruling. And the two living brothers and all of the Israelites go back to Bethlehem, and they bury their brother in the tomb that their father possesses there in Bethlehem. And then they go back to David in Hebron. And so then after that, the two sides continue to argue over who is going to be the king of all of Israel. And it says that David's house grew stronger while Ishbosheth's house grew weaker. And during his time in Hebron, David has 6 sons. The first son is born to his wife that he married from Jezreel, and his name is Amnon. And the second one is born to his second wife, Abigail, and his name is Chileab. And then apparently after he moved to Hebron, he married the daughter of the Jeshurite king. Jeshurites were up north on the eastern side, just northeast of the land that was owned by the Israelites on the eastern side of the Jordan, up near Syria in that area. And presumably he married the daughter of the king there so that he would ally with him instead of Ishbosheth, because Ishbosheth is right there south to his south, and it would make sense for him to make an alliance. So David's like, no, I'm making an alliance first, so you don't side with him, and then all of you on the eastern side of the Jordan come after me. And so he married his daughter, and she had his third son, and his third son's name was Absalom. And then it tells us that he had 3 more wives, and each one of them had 3 sons. We have no idea why he married them, who they were, anything like that. We just know that he had 6 sons, one by each one of the women. And then we'll begin reading in verse 6 about the Saul's side of the family. And so this is 2 Samuel 3, verse 6. And it says, "It came about while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner was making himself strong in the house of David. Now Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, 'Why have you gone into my father's concubine?'" Now, he's accusing Abner of sleeping with his father's concubine, which would have been a big power move for for Abner, if that is what he was doing. It would be basically to say, I'm taking the things that belong to your dad, as opposed to you taking the things that belong to your dad, which means even the kingdom. So it would mean that he was trying to show that he was going to take the kingdom from Ishbosheth, which doesn't make a ton of sense because Ishbosheth was given the kingdom by Abner in the first place. And so Abner is very angry about this, and he says to Ishbosheth, "Am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah? Today I show kindness to the house of Saul your father, to your brothers and your friends, and I have not delivered you into the hand of David. Yet today you charge me with the guilt concerning this woman." And so what he's trying to say here is, he's like, I didn't turn you over to David. I have protected you and the house of Saul this entire time, and then you accuse me of trying to take over the house. What am I? Am I like a dog of Judah? And the reason he's saying that is because at that time, dogs were scavengers. They ate whatever was around. And so he's saying, you think that I'm trying to take from the dead man? I'm trying to take his kingdom away from him like David is trying to do? He's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. And because you accused me of that, I'm done with you. And so in verse 9, he says, "May God do so to Abner, more also, if as the Lord has sworn to David, I do not accomplish this for him, to transfer the king from the house of Saul, to establish the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan to Beersheba." So what he's saying is I'm done with you. God already promised the kingdom to David, and now I'm going to deliver it to him. And I want David now to be able to rule from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. And so basically the whole nation, that's what he's trying to get across to to Ishbosheth. And it says after that, Ishbosheth doesn't say another word to his uncle because he's like, apparently you're mad at me and I'm not going to bother you anymore. But Abner wasn't joking. And so we move on to chapter 12, and it says, "Then Abner sent messengers to David in his place and said, 'Whose is the land? Make your covenant with me, and behold, my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel over to you.' And David said, 'Good, sounds like a plan to me. I'll make a covenant with you, but I demand only one thing of you, that you will not see my face until you bring my first wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, with you when you come to meet with me.' And so then David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, and he said, 'Give me my wife Michal, whom I was betrothed to, for 100 foreskins of the Philistines.' And so he was betrothed for the killing 100 Philistines. And then he actually did marry her. And so he's like, Saul gave her away. He wasn't his to give away. He gave her to me because I killed all of those Philistines for him. And so I deserve her and I want her back. And it says Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband because Saul had given her to another man. And he took her from her husband. And it says very sadly that her husband went with her weeping as he went. And he followed her, but Abner called him back and said, "Yeah, you're not going to you're not getting her back. My dad gave her to you under false pretenses, and now she's going back to her first husband. And so sad for him because he apparently cares about her, he wants her, but he never deserved her in the first place. And so then in verse 17 it says, "Now Abner had consultation with the elders of Israel, saying, In times past you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then, do it. For the Lord has spoken to David, saying, By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of their enemies." So he says, I know you've been wanting him to be your king all this time, and God has promised it to him, so go ahead. And Abner also spoke in the hearing of Benjamin. And in addition, Abner went to speak in the hearing of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and said to the whole house of Benjamin. So he says, even the tribe of Benjamin, who Saul and Ishbosheth belong to, have agreed to this. Everybody is in agreement that you can now be the king, David. And so he goes to David to tell him that. And in verse 20, it says, Abner went with 20 men to see David in Hebron, and David made a feast for them there. And then Abner said, Let's rise and go and gather all of Israel to you as the king, and we'll all make a covenant with you. You know, it's not just me and you making a covenant, everyone is making a covenant with you. And so David sent Abner away in peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoils with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. And so when Joab and all of the army that was with him arrived, and they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he's gone in peace. Then Joab's like, Are you kidding? That guy killed my brother. And so he came to the king and he said, What have you done? Behold, Abner came to you. Why have you sent him away in peace? Why is he already gone? You know that Abner the son of Ner has come to deceive you and to learn of your goings and your comings in and find out what you're doing. He's like, he's spying on you. He doesn't have good intentions. But David doesn't do anything about it. And so then Joab, beginning in verse 26, came out from David, and he sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the well of Sirah. And David didn't know any about this. So Joab sent for Abner, and David didn't know anything about it. And when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the middle of the gate to speak with him privately, and then he struck him in the belly so that he died on account of his brother. So he killed him for revenge of his brother's death. And then afterwards, when David heard about this, he is furious. And he says, I and my kingdom are innocent before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner the son of Ner. May it fall on the head of Joab and on his father's house. And then he curses him, and he says, May not there fail from the house of Joab one who has a discharge, one who's a leopard, one who holds a distaff, one who falls by the sword, or one who lacks bread. So basically he's like, I hope that everyone in your house is sick or disabled or weak or dead or impoverished because you did this thing. I hope that God curses your whole family with these things. And so Joab and his brother, it says, killed Abner because they put their brother to death. Then David says to Joab and to all the people who were with him, you need to tear your clothes, dress in sackcloth, and lament over Abner, the guy that you killed. You should be upset about this. And then they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice, and he wept at the grave of Abner, and all of the people wept. And then it says that the king says this about Abner. He says, Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put in fetters. As one falls before the wicked, you have fallen, and all of the people wept over him. So what he's saying is You should have died as a warrior. You should have gone down fighting. But instead, you died trying to make peace, thinking that everything was fine. That's not how a warrior should die. And I'm so sorry to you for that. You were trying to make peace and someone tricked you. And that is an absolutely horrible thing that he has done. And then in verse 35, it says, Then all the people came to persuade David to eat, but he wouldn't eat. It says, I will not eat until the sun goes down. And, this was a big deal that they killed Abner because he's the top negotiator for the nation of Israel. And so to kill the top negotiator might make all of the Israelites turn against him, And so he's like, this is a really horrible thing. I'm upset for Abner, and I am upset about the fact that this may have just, sabotaged the whole deal. But then the people are trying to persuade him to eat, and it says he's not going to eat until the sun goes down. And in verse 36, it says, all the people took note of this, and it pleased them, just as everything that the king did pleased them. And so they loved David, and they could see that it had not been his will to put Abner to death. And then, knowing that they understood this and they accepted him, David says to them, Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? I am weak this day, even though I'm the anointed king. It's like I couldn't even do anything about it. And these men of Zariah, his sister, those sons, are too difficult for me. May the Lord repay the evildoer according to his evil. So he's like, they did something very, very wrong. I am the king. I should be the one that has the power to put people to death. They did this without my consent, and I would never have done this. That was much too harsh for what he did. And then when Ishbosheth hears all of this, that this has happened to his uncle, he's like, great. He was my only supporter. And now that he's gone and he's also the commander of the army, then David may come and get me. The Israelites may not support me anymore. And it says that he is very concerned about these things. And he's the only one left of Saul's family to take the throne, because the only other person that is left in their family is a very young boy who is now crippled because during the battle with their father, with his father, where his father Jonathan died, the nurse was running away with this little boy of 5 years old, and she falls and hurts the little boy, and it cripples him. And so the only other person that is able to take the throne is like 7 years old, and he's crippled. And so he's not fit as, in that state to really be the heir of the throne anyway. Plus he can't fight against David. And so I'm the only person left, and he is worried. And then it tells us that he has two men that work for him, Bana and Rashab. These are two brothers from the tribe of Benjamin, and they led the raiding bands. And one day they come into the house pretending to get wheat, find the king asleep in the middle of the day in his bed, and kill him in his bed. And then they cut off his head, travel across the two rivers, the Jabbok down south and then west across the Jordan River, go to Hebron. This is a 30-mile travel. They reach David. They show him the head of Ishbosheth, and they say, look, we killed your adversary. Now you can have the kingdom without any worries. And David is like, are you serious? You people need to stop helping me, right? I do not need your help. I didn't need them to kill Saul because God had that taken care of. I was already safe in the land of the Philistines, and God had already promised me that I would get the land whenever Saul died anyway, so I didn't need anyone to hasten that up. I definitely didn't need anyone to kill Abner when he was trying to make a peace treaty and then, sabotage all of the efforts there. And I didn't need you to kill Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth did absolutely nothing wrong other than be Saul's son, and he's asleep in his bed. He's completely innocent. And these last two people weren't even killed in battle. They were killed in completely innocent, peaceful situations. They were being peaceful. You people were being violent. I do not need your help. And, whenever the man came to me who killed Saul and thought I was going to reward him for that, I executed him, and the same exact thing's going to happen to you because I did not need your help. God's been taking care of me all of this time. And so he kills those men, and then it says cuts off their hands and feet and hang them by the pool of Hebron. And then he takes Ishbosheth's head, all that he has of him, and buries him in Abner's tomb in Hebron as a show of respect, because this is Saul's son. It's also Jonathan, his beloved friend's brother, and he's died in a perfectly innocent way, and he is a part of the royal family. And so David respects him by burying his body in the tomb of Abner there in Hebron. And then this is the end of the story. Beginning in chapter 5, it tells us that all the tribes of Israel came to David after that at Hebron, and they said, "Behold, we are your bone and your flesh. Previously, when Saul was the king over us, you were the one who led us out and in. And the Lord had said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be the ruler over Israel." And so all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them before the Lord at Hebron, and they anointed him as king of all Israel. And David was 30 years old when he became the king, and he reigned for 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah for 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over Israel and over Judah. And so all of them come to him and they say, "We are going to make you our king for 3 reasons. The first reason is you are our family. You're our flesh and blood. The second reason is, even when Saul was the king, you were the one that led us. You were the one that led us in battle. You were the one that was here with us, and we trust you. And the third reason is because God has chosen you to be the one that is the king after Saul. He has chosen you to shepherd." Remember that David was a shepherd. He was the shepherd of his father's sheep. And now he is going to shepherd the people of Israel. And so he says, he has chosen you no longer to be the shepherd of your father's sheep, but to shepherd us, to care for us, to lead us, to protect us. We've already seen you do that. You will be our king. And this is the 3rd time that he has been anointed. The first time by Samuel, when Saul was still the king, but God had rejected him. The second time by only the people of Judah, and the 3rd time by all of Israel. And so David is now their king, all of Israel's king.